So, hi. I think it's time I talk about relational evangelism. Mainly, what is relational evangelism and how do we do it? And I've been asking this question lately because I went to my friend's school. Their intervarsity was hosting like a missional leaders cohort for all the intervarsities in the state. Which, I don't know what a missional leaders cohort is. I think that was a really deceptive name for it. It was an evangelism workshop. That's what it was. And so we talked about, they had us pick two friends right when we walked in. They were like, think of two people who you've been talking to who have become friends at your school who aren't believers. And that was really difficult for me because I haven't made many friends at my school, like friends that aren't believers. I've made friends like in intervarsity, but in terms of my classes, I'm really quiet. I don't really talk to people. And that's something I've been feeling convicted of. So that was one thing, the missional cohort thing helps me focus on is, my first semester I was wiki gung-ho. I was like, I'm at this school because God wants me at the school and this is my mission field, and I had the right perspective. But when I came back in January, I was feeling really sad and lazy, and I didn't have that focus. And so the cohort helped me reestablish my goals. Like, I'm not here for myself. I'm here to minister to other people. So, and that helps me focus on these two friends that I knew from last semester to make sure I'm still connecting with them this semester. One of them I haven't seen yet, and even though we talk on Facebook, I'm really stressed out that I haven't seen him in person. I need to get on that. I really do. Pray that God gives me an opportunity to see him somewhere, because I don't know, he's a cool kid, so I like hanging out with him. But not just that, he needs Jesus. So anyway, on Friday night, having this new realignment of focus, on Friday night I was at my friend's house, and he and one of our other friends were talking about making friends on campus, and how it's really hard to be a witness to people when they're just so far from the truth, and you have to become friends with them in order for them to hear you, and yet it's impossible to become friends with them because you don't have anything in common with them. They're only interested in, getting drunk and going to parties. And we were looking at two sides of the same coin. And so they were asking me, how do you befriend non-believers who don't want to have anything to do with God's truth? And how do you walk that line between, keeping yourself holy and still being a witness? And how do you lead people to Christ through friendships? How does relationship evangelism work? And that's kind of my question, because I don't know, as I mentioned earlier. I've been on service trips where we've done service evangelism. I've been on evangelism trips where we've just done street evangelism. I've talked to strangers about my faith so many times, and I've done service projects for people in the name of Christ. But I haven't had any opportunities in my life to lead someone to Christ through a relationship, because I haven't known any unbelievers. I've lived in my own little Christianized bubble, and I only get to go out of that on missions trips until now that I'm in school. And I'm in an environment that's so not Christianized. It's kind of really awesome, and I'm kind of really afraid of squandering these opportunities. So I'm trying to figure out, what is relational evangelism and how can I practice it? There's this kid, one of the kids I picked in my head during the missional leaders cohort, who I see him 3 times a week, and sometimes more, because we hang out in the same places. But he's in one of my classes. He's just in the section after mine, and every single week we get together and we talk about, last semester we got together and we talked about random philosophical stuff, just because he's this philosophical person, and naturally I disagree with everything he says, so that gives us plenty to talk about. We do the same thing every single Wednesday after philosophy class, except that we're talking about what we're learning in philosophy class, which right now we've been talking about what is truth and how does one live an upright, holy, pious life. And after this next test, we're finishing up the first unit, then we're going into, does God exist? Which, he does believe that God exists. He just doesn't believe in the Christian God. So we have the greatest conversations. It's like textbook. I feel so crazy blessed to, my first experience with relational evangelism is just so, I want to say, not easy, but straightforward. Like, I don't know all the words to say, and I'm sure I've totally botched my witness, but it's a total blessing that I'm even able to have these conversations. So I don't know what relationship evangelism looks like. I just know that every opportunity comes from God. And if we know the story, and if we know how God's been real in our lives, we're going to see opportunities start coming. We're going to see this come to fruition. That's an unsatisfactory answer. I know it is. But if we make a priority to be there, to make relationships with non-Christians, and this is what I was talking with my friends on Friday, this is what we have so much trouble wrapping our heads around, is how to make friends with non-Christians. How do you make friends with someone who's not on the same page as you, who doesn't have that essential, like, my relationship with Jesus is the most important, most defining thing about me, and I obviously don't have that in common with someone who isn't a Christian. So what do you do with that? And I don't know. All I know is that if we have a heart to love people, and we have a heart to treat people better than ourselves, and if we're constantly reaching out and talking to other people, I think God can bless us with a friendship developing. And that's all we can pray for. So that's what I've started praying for. Friends in my classes. And I've started talking. I used to not talk in classes. And now before class, it's so hard for me. It's so hard. Because I'm so in my own little bubble. But I've started talking to the people around me, trying to engage them, trying to be friendly to them. And if a friendship develops, that's of God. And I'm just going to have to trust Him for that, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So there's that. Happy Sunday.